Hi there, Wendy. Thanks for opting in to the video critique. I am just going to try to get your spread in the right order. I'm guessing this is the last page. Okay, so I see you have a good color scheme that you're starting to work with. You have your images placed. Okay, a bold title. Let's see if you have a pull quote. I don't see a pull quote, so make sure you get one of those in there. Or maybe, oh, actually, yeah, this is it. And then your wraparound is for this image. Okay. So one of the things I'm noticing when I'm clicking through this is there really isn't very much white space. It's a lot of writing, and that's going to be very intimidating to your reader. So you kind of want to take a opportunity to inject a lot more white space. I would pull these columns away from the edge of the page. They're pretty close. If this is a margin in a real magazine, you probably would lose half of the first word of every one of these. And so you want to be aware of that. You want to pull that margin away, or that column away from the margin. You could add a little bit more space between these as well, just a little, not too much. And then be sure to turn off your hyphens. See how your hyphens are turned on. You're always going to want to have those turned off for any kind of professional design. Watch small things, like here's a floating quotation mark. I'm not quite sure what that goes with, but you'll want to make sure you don't have any issues like that. This is just so much writing. You might benefit from adding an enter in between your paragraphs and probably making your type size a little bit smaller. Try 1 point smaller. If that looks really small, maybe half a point smaller. But it looks aggressive here on the page with how much writing there are. This is going to turn off most readers when they see this much type this big on a page. Okay, I would also recommend adding more white space at the top of your pages as well as the bottom of your pages. There should be room for your eye to flow around these columns. Read a few paragraphs, maybe a nice tidy paragraph, jump over here, read a few paragraphs, look at a picture, things like that. Your image here is pretty safely sized. I would recommend to make your images larger. You want your images to be one of the first things you see when you look at the page. They shouldn't be an afterthought to the columns of copy. They should be something that tracks your attention, pulls you in immediately. Okay, so one of the ways you can do that instantly is by making this quite a bit bigger, 2-3 times bigger perhaps. Make it a full bleed if you want. Try having it go off the side of a page. See how you like that. You can keep that text wrap, but pull it away, or you could even keep it here and kind of just move it down a little bit. That would look neat, overlapped with your blue and your orange, but quite a bit larger. Okay. For your text wrap, see how the edge of your letter is right on the edge of this image. You probably have applied the text wrap to the shape, or maybe to the bounding box, one of those different options. When you go Windows and open the text box options, you will see underneath the text box options, when that window is open, there is a few fields that you can enter that will say like 0.12 inches or 0 inches. Put this at like 0.2 or so, and that should bump these letters over. So when you're in InDesign looking at the text wrap box, you're going to see some areas that you can put numbers into. It'll say like to the right of the image, left of the image, top and bottom. You could maybe decrease this one so it kind of all looks symmetrical around it, and increase the one on the right hand side. Maybe on the bottom you might need to too. I don't know if see how close your L is to this image. You want to avoid that as well. Anytime you have one element and it stops exactly where another starts, that's usually a problem. Okay, I would recommend to probably make your subheadings a bit bigger. That'll help draw attention to them and also give the eye some visual rest. Go through and go ahead and remove these footnote numbers. We don't really need those for this. It'll help it look a little bit tidier as well. Okay, let's take a look at your cover page. Your cover page is looking good. I like that you have contrasting type for this first line. Make sure it's totally consistent though, and this A is not a different type. That needs to be bumped down so you have all this first line consistent. You got to watch your margins here as well. Super important. These are really narrow. So let's talk about your title. I like how you are thinking about this. I like that this is large, it's assertive, you have a different color for here. It is center aligned, and usually we encourage you to try to avoid center alignment since you're getting started. Maybe play around with right alignment. Could you introduce some contrasting typography here, for example? Maybe how merciful. Let's see, this is your contrasting typeface. Has been, I don't know, because this feels a little more lighthearted than this title. So it might be okay to keep this title. Maybe you could use by Elder Quentin L. Cook in this typeface. But I'd like to see you play around with maybe writing aligning it and having by Elder Quentin L. Cook. You could tuck that right underneath the word been. You could make how merciful the on one line perhaps, and Lord has been on a next, and Lord has been could be even bigger. So play around with that a little bit. You want to probably decrease the amount of space between these lines. It looks very spaced out, these three, and then this is really close. And so this is a little bit too much space between these two lines. You can remedy that a few different ways. You can play around with the leading and the kerning. In the kerning is between letters, leading is between lines in the paragraph palette, or I personally prefer breaking up my titles into individual text boxes so that I can manipulate the phrases I want to keep together. So think about this title as broken into kind of thoughts. So how merciful the Lord has been. So maybe how merciful the Lord is like one portion, and then has been is another, or merciful the Lord kind of goes together for me. So play around with that a little bit. I feel like I want to show you a title from one of the examples. So let me try to pull that up here real quick. Just to add some variety and visual interest to that. It's really good that it's blue. It's really good that it's, let's see. Okay, so see how for this title, the Holy Temple, a Beacon of Light, is broken kind of into two thoughts. And then you have the name tucked over here to the right with some kind of element. So this is kind of similar to what you're doing. It's in the same vein. However, see how much there's more contrast here. There's a different color, a different type, and this is actually justified. It's right aligned and left aligned. That might be cool if you wanted to do that, because these are almost the same amount of words. So that's a justified title. And then you could perhaps tuck by Elder Quentin L. Cook over here. Okay, so just continue to play around with this. Your pull quote, I don't know if I love it in the paragraph because it's going to make it seem like you need to read it next. So 14 languages, mass areas of the world, saints, that's your eye is going to read saints next and then continue. So if you want to do a pull quote, I would recommend having it intercept and break into the shapes of your columns as opposed to keeping in line with them. Okay, so maybe you could place it in the middle. You could place it over here on the right hand side, maybe like a long narrow column that goes off the edge of the page would be kind of cool, like a full bleed shape with your quote inside of it. That might be nice. It's going to look a lot better once there are less words on the page, and then that's going to free you up to do some additional things with your shapes perhaps. You could even make this thicker following the rule of thirds, all blue with it orange, and then those words, and maybe one column as opposed to two on this page in a big image. All right, so lots of different options. Oh yeah, lots of different options. See how much space there is between these. Okay, that's a good example. That's kind of what you're going to be wanting to go for. more room around your elements. Okay, so that's a lot to think about. If you start making choices and then you get kind of stuck, feel free to shoot me an email with where you're at, and I'll be happy to look at it and give you some tips for how to move forward. But you're off to a good start. Just got to kind of hone in those fine details and really break it up so the eye has visual rest. That's going to do the most for your design, as well as upping a bit of the contrast and dealing with some of those technical things that are happening in your columns. Okay, thanks and good luck this week.